When sunshine met eyes, Natalie Brooks had always believed that every person deserved kindness, regardless of their status or demeanor. It was this unwavering philosophy that guided her through the marble corridors of the prestigious Grandview Hotel, where she worked as the head event coordinator. The morning sun streamed through the crystal chandeliers, casting prismatic patterns across the polished floors as she reviewed the schedule for the upcoming International Business Summit. Her auburn curls bounced with each energetic step, and her emerald eyes sparkled with the enthusiasm that had become her signature trait. The arrival of Storm Cloudsea revolving doors swept open with a decisive push, and the entire lobby seemed to freeze. Damien Ashford strode in with the commanding presence of someone who owned not just rooms, but entire buildings. His charcoal suit was cut with precision, his dark hair swept back perfectly, and his slate grey eyes held the temperature of a winter morning. He was the CEO of Ashford Industries, known throughout the business world for his merciless negotiations and complete lack of patience for incompetence. Behind him trailed his assistant, Trevor, struggling to keep pace while managing 3 briefcases and a tablet. Natalie watched from the concierge desk of the hotel manager. Bernard practically sprinted across the lobby to greet their most important guest. She had seen powerful people before, but something about Damien Ashford made the very air feel heavier. When Bernard gestured toward the conference wing, explaining the arrangements, Damien's expression remained carved from stone. No smile, no acknowledgement, just a curt nod that sent Bernard scurrying to ensure everything was absolutely perfect. The collision that changed everything. Natalie was rushing toward conference room, her arms full of welcome packets and name badges, when fate intervened in the form of a wet floor. Her heel caught on the slippery marble, and she felt herself pitching forward. The packets exploded from her arms like confetti, scattering across the pristine floor over a cascade of paper and ribbons. She braced for impact, but instead found herself caught by strong arms that smelled of expensive cologne and something else, something clean and crisp like winter pine. "I'm so sorry." "Oh my goodness, thank you," Natalie gasped, looking up into the face of Damien Ashford. His hand steadied her shoulders, and for the briefest moment, she saw something flicker in those cold grey eyes. Surprise, perhaps? Or was it curiosity? "Are you injured?" His voice was deep, controlled, but not unkind. "Only my pride." Natalie laughed, immediately dropping to gather the scattered materials. "And possibly my reputation as the coordinator who has everything under control." She expected him to walk away, to dismiss her as beneath his notice. Instead, Damien Ashford, billionaire CEO, knelt beside her and began collecting name badges. The unexpected gesture. "You don't have to do that, Mr. Ashford," Natalie said quickly, mortified that someone of his stature was picking up after her clumsiness. "I can manage, clearly," he replied, and was that the hint of amusement in his tone. He handed her a stack of badges, their fingers brushing briefly. "You're the event coordinator?" "Yes, sir. Natalie Brooks. I'll be overseeing all the conference arrangements." She stood, clutching the materials to her chest, acutely aware that several hotel staff members were watching this interaction with dropped jaws. "If you need anything during your stay, please don't hesitate to let me know. We want to ensure your experience is absolutely perfect." Damien stood as well, and Natalie realized how tall he was. She had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, which she did despite the intimidating intensity of his gaze. Most people looked away when Damien Ashford stared at them. Natalie Brooks did not. "I appreciate your dedication," he said, his tone formal but lacking the ice she had expected. "Though perhaps watching where you walk might be advisable." Instead of being offended, Natalie smiled brilliantly. "Absolutely sound advice, Mr. Ashford. I promise to keep both eyes on the floor and both feet firmly planted. Though that might make it difficult to ensure your conference runs smoothly, so I might have to risk the occasional glance upward." Was that a smile? No, surely not. But something definitely softened in Damien's expression before he nodded curtly and walked away, leaving Natalie standing there with her heart beating strangely fast. The seed is planted throughout that first day. Damien found his attention wandering in ways it never had before. During presentations, he caught himself looking toward the back of the room where Natalie moved quietly, ensuring refreshments were replenished and technical difficulties were resolved before anyone noticed. During lunch, he observed how she spoke to everyone, from the catering staff to the keynote speakers, with the same genuine warmth. She laughed easily, smiled constantly, and seemed to carry sunshine wherever she went. It irritated him. Damien Ashford did not get distracted. He did not notice event coordinators or care about their infectious optimism. Yet when she approached his table to ensure his meal was satisfactory, he found himself engaging in actual conversation rather than his typical dismissive nod. "How long have you worked at the Grandview?" he asked, surprising both himself and Trevor, who nearly dropped his water glass. 3 years, Natalie replied, her smile never wavering despite the unexpected question. "I love it here. Every event is like creating a small world where people can connect and build something meaningful. Today, for instance, your summit is bringing together minds that might create the next technological breakthrough. That's pretty amazing, don't you think?" Damien looked at her thoughtfully. When was the last time someone had described his business dealings as amazing with such genuine enthusiasm? Most people saw dollar signs and power plays. Natalie Brooks saw human connection and potential. "It's business," he said finally, his voice softer than usual. "It's opportunity," she countered gently. "And that's always worth celebrating." As she moved to the next table, Damien realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, he wanted to know more about someone beyond their professional utility. He wanted to understand what made Natalie Brooks so relentlessly optimistic, so genuinely kind in a world that often punished such qualities. The day that wouldn't end that evening. As the conference concluded and guests dispersed to their rooms, Damien remained in the lounge, ostensibly reviewing contracts, but actually watching Natalie coordinate the cleanup with the same cheerful efficiency she had displayed all day. She thanked each staff member by name, helped fold table linens despite it not being her job, and even made a young server laugh when he accidentally knocked over a tray. "You're still here, Mr. Ashford." Natalie appeared beside his chair, her smile somehow still bright, despite what must have been an exhausting day. "Can I get you anything before the bar closes? Why are you so happy?" The question escaped before Damien could stop it, blunt and perhaps too revealing. Natalie tilted her head, considering him with those remarkable green eyes. "Because I have so much to be grateful for. A job I love, people who depend on me, the chance to make each day a little better than yesterday. Why wouldn't I be happy?" It was the most naive thing Damien had ever heard. It was also the most refreshing. As Natalie bid him good night and walked away, humming softly to herself, Damien Ashford made a decision that would alter both their lives. He would extend his stay at the Grandview Hotel, citing business interests that required his attention. In truth, he simply wanted to understand this woman who smiled at the world as if it smiled back. This woman who made his carefully controlled heart beat just a little faster. This woman who had no idea that the cold, powerful man was already beginning to fall. Unexpected extension morning. As the conference concluded, Bernard received a call that made him nearly drop his coffee. Damien Ashford was extending his stay indefinitely, something the notoriously busy CEO never did. Within an hour, the penthouse suite was secured for another month, and the entire hotel staff was on high alert to ensure absolute perfection. Natalie, however, was simply pleased that such an important guest had found the Grandview comfortable enough to extend his visit. She had no idea she was the reason. Strategic encounters. Damien Ashford had built an empire through careful planning and strategic execution. Pursuing Natalie Brooks required the same calculated approach. Though he would never admit he was pursuing anyone, he simply found himself requesting her assistance for various matters. The lighting in his suite needed adjustment. Could Miss Brooks evaluate it? The business center required better organization for his ongoing meetings. Would Miss Brooks coordinate improvements? Each request was perfectly reasonable. each interaction carefully orchestrated to seem coincidental. Natalie approached each task with her characteristic enthusiasm, never suspecting that Damien's particular interest in proper curtain angles had nothing to do with the view and everything to do with watching her face light up when she solved a problem. She would stand in his suite, pointing out solutions with animated gestures, completely oblivious to how his gaze lingered on her profile when she turned toward the windows. "I think if we adjust these panels, you'll get natural light without the glare on your laptop screen," she explained one morning, reaching up to demonstrate her sleeve slipped down slightly, revealing a bracelet woven from colorful thread. "Did one of your nieces make that?" Damien asked, surprising himself with the personal question. Natalie glanced at her wrist, her smile softening. "The children at Riverside Community Center made them. I volunteer there on weekends, helping with activities. This one was from a little girl, Sophie, who told me the colors represent friendship, courage, and hope. She's 7 and already wiser than most adults I know." The image of Natalie spending her free time with underprivileged children did something strange to Damien's jest. In his world, charity was tax-deductible donations and gala appearances. In her world, it was friendship bracelets and Saturday mornings. The crisis begins of everything changed on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Natalie was finalizing arrangements for a celebrity wedding scheduled for the following week when Bernard burst into her office, his face ashen. "We have a problem. A serious problem." Victor Thornton, Damien's most bitter business rival, had booked the grand ballroom for the same weekend as the wedding. The booking had been made through a subsidiary company, deliberately concealing Thornton's involvement until it was too late to cancel without breaching contract. But the real problem was worse. Thornton had leaked false information to the press claiming the Grandview had health code violations and was under investigation. The story was already spreading across social media, and the celebrity bride was threatening to cancel. Natalie found Damien in the business center, working through a stack of contracts. "Mr. Ashford, I need your advice on a delicate situation." She explained everything quickly and clearly, her usual optimism tempered by genuine concern. "The bride is considering pulling out, which would devastate the hotel's reputation. And if Mr. Thornton's false claims gain traction, it could damage us irreparably. When ice becomes fire." Damien's expression transformed into something dangerous. He stood slowly, his full height and presence suddenly overwhelming in the small office. "Victor Thornton did this." His voice was quiet, which somehow made it more frightening. "We believe so, yes. But Mr. Ashford, I don't want to involve you in hotel business. I just thought, given your experience with corporate challenges, you might have suggestions for crisis management." Damien looked at Natalie, this woman who had somehow become important to him without his permission, and made a decision. "Call an emergency meeting with Bernard and your media team. We're going to bury Thornton so thoroughly he'll wish he'd never heard of the Grandview Hotel." The battle plan what followed was a masterclass in corporate warfare. Damien pulled strings Natalie didn't know existed. Within 3 hours, he had health inspectors at the hotel conducting a surprise inspection that would publicly clear the Grandview of all accusations. He contacted his media connections, planting stories about Thornton's history of using dirty tactics against competitors. He even reached out to the celebrity bride personally, offering his own reputation as guarantee of the Grandview's excellence. Natalie watched in amazement as this cold, controlled man became a force of nature, protecting something he cared about. She just didn't realize yet that he was protecting her as much as the hotel. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked as they worked late into the night, coordinating responses and managing the crisis. "You don't owe the Grandview anything." Damien looked up from his laptop, his grey eyes holding hers with unexpected intensity. "Consider it protecting my investment. I can't have my accommodations threatened by small-minded competitors." It was a lie, and somewhere deep down, Natalie felt it, but she smiled and accepted his explanation, returning to her work while Damien returned to his, both pretending that something fundamental hadn't shifted between them. Midnight revelation sat to in the morning. They were alone in the conference room, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. The crisis was contained. The health inspection had been perfect. The celebrity wedding was back on. Thornton had been forced to issue a public apology. Natalie stretched, exhausted but victorious. "We did it. Mr. Ashford, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done today." "Damien," he said quietly. "You can call me Damien. I think we've moved beyond formality." Natalie felt her heart skip. "Damien," she repeated, testing the name. It felt intimate, dangerous. "Then you should call me Natalie. Miss Brooks sounds like my grandmother." He smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Natalie, it suits you. Means birthday of the Lord, doesn't it? Born on Christmas, December 23rd, actually. Close enough that my parents combined celebrations, which I never minded because it meant bigger parties." She laughed, then studied him curiously. "How did you know what my name meant?" Damien looked away, suddenly uncomfortable with revealing how much attention he had paid to her. "I have a tendency to research things that interest me." The weight of those words hung between them. "Things that interest me." Natalie felt her breath catch, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how the late hour had created an unexpected intimacy. This powerful man, who terrified most people, had spent his evening protecting her workplace, learning the meaning of her name, and looking at her like she was something precious. The almost moment Natalie, Damien began, then stopped, struggling with words for perhaps the first time in his adult life. How did he explain that somewhere between scattered name badges and late-night crisis management, she had become essential to him? That her smile was the first thing he thought about when he woke, and the last thing he wanted to see before sleep? That her relentless optimism had somehow penetrated walls he had spent years building? But before he could find the words, Trevor burst through the door. "Damien, we have a situation with the Tokyo merger. They're threatening to pull out unless you're on a video call in the next 15 minutes. The moment shattered. Damien stood, his mask sliding back into place. "Of course, Natalie, get some rest. You've earned it." He left, and Natalie sat alone in the conference room, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart was beating far too quickly. Something had almost happened, something significant, and she wasn't sure if she was relieved or disappointed that Trevor had interrupted. The following days after that night, Damien's presence at the Grandview became even more pronounced. He requested Natalie's input on everything, from restaurant reservations to art selection for his suite. She coordinated his meetings, arranged his transportation, and somehow became woven into the fabric of his daily routine. Bernard noticed. Trevor definitely noticed, but Natalie remained cheerfully oblivious to the way Damien's eyes followed her across every room, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way he found excuses to brush against her hand when accepting papers or coffee. She saw him as a demanding but fair client who had become something close to a friend. She had no idea he was falling deeper every day, drowning in feelings he didn't understand and couldn't control. One afternoon, Natalie was showing Damien the rooftop garden, suggesting it as a potential location for his next business dinner. "I know it's unconventional, but there's something magical about dining under the stars. It makes even business feel more human, more connected." Damien watched her face as she spoke, the way her eyes sparkled with genuine belief in the beauty of simple moments. "You see magic everywhere, don't you?" "I see possibility," she corrected gently. "And yes, I suppose it's a kind of magic. Don't you ever just want to stop and appreciate something beautiful without analyzing its strategic value?" "I'm looking at something beautiful right now," Damien said quietly, the words escaping before he could stop them. Natalie turned, caught off guard by the raw honesty in his voice. For the first time, she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch, something vulnerable and intense that he quickly concealed. "The view is spectacular," she said softly, deliberately misunderstanding, giving him an escape. "That's why I thought you'd appreciate it." Damien nodded, accepting the lifeline, but they both knew something had been revealed. The cold, powerful man was no longer quite so cold, and Natalie Brooks, who smiled at everyone, was beginning to realize that his rare smiles were becoming her favorite thing in the world. The unraveling 3 weeks after the Thornton crisis, Natalie found herself in an impossible situation. She had volunteered to organize a charity fundraiser for Riverside Community Center, the place where she spent her weekends with the children. The event needed a venue, and the Grandview had donated their smallest ballroom. It should have been simple, but the fundraiser was on the same evening as another high-profile event, stretching the hotel's resources dangerously thin. Natalie was managing both, working 18-hour days and refusing to ask for help. Damien noticed immediately. He noticed everything about her now. The shadows under her eyes, the way her smile became slightly strained by afternoon, how she skipped meals to coordinate vendor deliveries. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. This evidence of her spreading herself too thin for everyone except herself. "You need an assistant," he said bluntly one evening. Finding her in the empty ballroom, 9 o'clock, still arranging chair covers. Natalie looked up, surprised to see him. Damien rarely ventured into work areas outside his scheduled meetings. "I'm fine, really. Just a busy week." "You're exhausted." He walked closer, his expensive shoes silent on the polished floor. "When did you last eat?" "I had coffee this morning," Natalie said, then realized her mistake when his expression darkened. "And some crackers at lunch, probably, I think." The breaking point: Damien did something completely unprecedented. He pulled out his phone and ordered food from the hotel's 5-star restaurant, using his status to have it delivered immediately to the ballroom. Then he removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and began helping her with the chair covers. Natalie stared. "What are you doing? What does it look like?" "These chairs won't cover themselves." He worked with surprising efficiency, his movements precise and controlled. "You're a CEO. You don't arrange chair covers." "I'm a person who sees someone working themselves to exhaustion and has the capacity to help." The principles are the same in any context. They worked in silence until the food arrived. Damien insisted she sit and eat while he continued the setup. Natalie wanted to argue, but found herself too tired and too touched by his unexpected kindness. She watched him work. This powerful man in designer clothes arranging chairs for a children's charity event. And something shifted in her chest. "Why are you really still here, Damien?" The question emerged softly, but it hung heavy in the air. "Your business concluded weeks ago. The penthouse suite is beautiful, but you have properties all over the world. So why stay at the Grandview?" The moment of truth: Damien stopped working. He stood perfectly still, his back to her, and Natalie could see the tension in his shoulders. When he finally turned, his expression was more open than she had ever seen it, vulnerable in a way that made him seem younger and more human. "Because you're here." The simple words struck like lightning. Natalie set down her food, her heart suddenly pounding. "What?" "I stayed because of you, Natalie. Because your smile is the best part of my day. Because your optimism makes me believe the world might not be as cold as I thought. Because somewhere between scattered name badges and midnight crisis management, you became the most important person in my life." He moved closer, his voice rough with emotion. He no longer tried to hide. "I'm not good at this. I don't know how to be anything other than controlled and strategic. But with you, all my strategies fail. You make me want things I never thought I could have." Natalie stood slowly, her legs trembling. "Damien, I'm just an event coordinator. You're you. We live in completely different worlds. Then I'll live in yours," he said fiercely. "Or we'll build a new world together. I don't care about the logistics, Natalie. For the first time in my life, I don't care about strategy or planning or what makes sense. I only care that being near you makes me feel alive in ways I didn't know I was dead." The confession continues: "Do you know when I knew?" Damien continued, moving closer until only a few feet separated them. "The day after the Thornton crisis, I watched you thank every single staff member personally for their help. You bought cookies from the cafe and delivered them to the security team who had worked overnight. You sent handwritten notes to my media contacts, thanking them for their assistance. You thought of everyone except yourself. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. And I realized that I would move mountains to make you smile. That your happiness had become more important than my next merger or acquisition. That somewhere along the way, I had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Love. This cold, powerful man who never smiled, who built empires and crushed competitors, was standing in a partially decorated ballroom confessing love. Natalie's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say you feel something too, Damien whispered, closing the final distance between them. Say I'm not alone in this, because if I am, I'll walk away right now and never mention it again. But Natalie, please, tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel for you. Her truth. Natalie looked up at him. This man who had terrified her initially and now made her feel safer than anywhere else. She thought about how her days had started revolving around their encounters, how she found herself dressing more carefully on mornings when she knew he had meetings, how his rare smiles had become treasures she collected and reviewed in quiet moments. I'm scared, she admitted softly. I'm scared because yes, I feel something big and overwhelming that I don't fully understand. But Damien, what happens when you leave? When you go back to your real life and realize that the event coordinator was just a temporary distraction? You're not a distraction, he said firmly, his hands coming up to frame her face with surprising gentleness. You're the destination I didn't know I was searching for, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to leave. The first kiss, I don't want you to leave, Natalie whispered, and that was all the permission Damien needed. He kissed her with weeks of restrained longing, gentle but intense, pouring every suppressed feeling into the connection of their lips. Natalie's hands came up to grip his shirt, steadying herself against the wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. This wasn't like anything she had imagined. It was better, deeper, more real. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Damien rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Natalie Brooks. I know it's fast and probably inappropriate given our circumstances, but I don't care. I love your kindness, your optimism, your terrible habit of working too hard for everyone else. I love how you see the best in people, including me, especially me. I love you too, Natalie said, the words feeling both terrifying and exactly right. I think I have 4 weeks, but was too afraid to admit it. The new beginning. They finished setting up the ballroom together, working side by side in comfortable silence broken by soft conversation and stolen kisses. Damien learned about her childhood, her dreams of eventually opening her own event planning business, her fierce love for the children at Riverside. Natalie learned about his lonely upbringing, the pressure of inheriting his father's empire at 25, his secret donations to dozens of charities he never publicized. Stay with me tonight, Damien said as they finished, not as a command, but as a hopeful request. Not for anything inappropriate. I just want to hold you, to wake up knowing this is real. Natalie smiled, that brilliant sunshine smile that had captivated him from the beginning. Yes, but I need to be back early tomorrow. The charity event is in 2 days, and there's still so much to do. Then I'll help, Damien said simply. Whatever you need, I'm here. Not as a powerful CEO or a wealthy client, just as the man who loves you and wants to support your dreams. The charity event fundraiser was a spectacular success. The ballroom was transformed into a magical wonderland that delighted the children and impressed the donors. But the real surprise came when Damien took the stage during the donation portion of the evening. I want to announce a personal contribution to Riverside Community Center, he said, his voice carrying across the room. A $5 million endowment to ensure these programs continue indefinitely and to expand services to 3 additional locations throughout the city. The crowd erupted in applause, but Damien's eyes were only on Natalie, who stood at the side of the stage with tears streaming down her face. But more importantly, he continued, I want to acknowledge someone who showed me that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts and everything to do with how we treat each other. Natalie Brooks, the woman I love, dedicates her time and heart to these children every week. She's the real hero here. I'm just a man who learned about kindness from the kindest person I've ever known. After the event, as they stood on the rooftop garden under the stars, Damien pulled a small box from his pocket. "This isn't what you think," he said quickly, seeing Natalie's eyes widen. "It's too soon for that question, though I already know my answer will always be yes. This is something else." He opened the box to reveal a delicate bracelet, beautifully crafted, but simple in design. "It's made from recycled materials," he explained, "by a company that employs disadvantaged youth. I thought of you when I saw it. Something beautiful that helps others, just like you." Natalie let him fasten it around her wrist, next to Sophie's friendship bracelet. "It's perfect. You're perfect. Well, not perfect. Perfectly imperfect, which is even better. I'm going to extend my stay indefinitely," Damien said, pulling her close. "Actually, I'm going to relocate my primary operations to this city. I've already started the process. You're changing your entire life for me?" Natalie asked, amazed. "I'm changing my life for us," he corrected, "because you were right that day on the rooftop. There's more to life than business strategies and mergers. There's magic in simple moments, in connection, in love. You taught me that. Now let me show you what we can build together." Epilogue. 6 months later, Natalie stood in the doorway of her new office, still hardly believing it was real. Brooks and Ashford Event Planning occupied an entire floor of a building Damien had purchased specifically for this purpose. She ran the creative side, while he handled the business operations, a partnership that had proven remarkably successful both professionally and personally. Damien appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy, deliriously," she sighed, leaning back against him. "Though I still can't believe you convinced Bernard to let me go from the Grandview. He loved having you as a permanent resident. I convinced him by buying the hotel," Damien admitted casually. "We're now the primary shareholders. Bernard still manages daily operations, but we can ensure the Grandview maintains its commitment to excellence and ethical business practices." Natalie turned in his arms, laughing. "You bought a hotel." "You actually bought an entire hotel. I bought the place where I fell in love," he corrected, kissing her softly. "Seemed appropriate. Besides, we'll need a beautiful venue for our wedding someday. When you're ready, no pressure. Someday soon," Natalie promised, touching his face gently. "Because I love you, Damien Ashford, my cold, powerful man who turned out to have the warmest heart of anyone I've ever known. Only for you," he murmured against her lips. "Only ever for you." And in the building below, in the city beyond, life continued its chaotic dance. But in that moment, in that office, two people who had found each other against all odds stood together, proof that sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the most beautiful ones. The event coordinator and the CEO, sunshine and ice, warmth melting through carefully constructed walls to create something neither had known they needed, but both would treasure forever.